Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Aspire Review podcast. My name is Charlie McClellan, and I'm delighted to be joined this evening by John Boulding and Dan McClellan. We gave it our all, Aspire, but we couldn't quite secure that Slater and Gordon Premiership title. We fall just 1 point behind Leeds, who we said massive congratulations to for winning their first league title in their history. But still, even though we didn't, achieve our main goal, there was still plenty to be proud of after this weekend. JB, now you've had sort of a day to let the dust settle and all the emotions step away. How do you look back upon this weekend and the season as a whole?
Firstly, I want to echo, like you said, congratulations to Leeds. Obviously, over the course of the season, they deserve to be up the top, and they play some great football this season. Looking at us, I'm proud of where we've ended up. The last couple of weekends, I thought we played outstanding, and the football we played was something that was spectacular, and we've been working so hard towards. Obviously, overall, the fact that we come second isn't great for our standards. I know it was only a point behind, but I'm proud of the fact that we obviously remained unbeaten throughout the season, and to only concede 3 goals in the league, the toughest league I think that's ever been known in England, is a credit to ourselves and obviously the boys and Sal, obviously. So I'm really proud of that. So yeah, overall, obviously disappointed we didn't win, but overall fantastic with progress that we've made this year.
Dan, where do you think the fine margins have been sort of lost for you guys this season? And looking ahead to next year, what do you think you can do to sort of put that right and make sure it's your name on the trophy?
Obviously, if you go from a very literal point of view, it's a 1 point gap we had to make up on Leeds, and it's just converting those nearlies into points. You think about the biggest one I come to think of is that Leeds game, the first one, the 1-1, where if we win that game, we had the 3 points in our hands, and maybe we just switched off. We would have felt that we deserved a goal to not be disallowed earlier in that game that would have won it for us, but it's about not switching off. And if we hadn't conceded that goal, that's the league right there. And it's not even that was the only time. We had games that we drew earlier in the season as well, that if we convert one of those games to wins, which we easily could have done, then that's the league there as well. I think obviously in goal difference we were a lot behind other teams. It didn't end up coming down to that. And you look at how strong the strength and depth is in some of the teams in the league, and then they're winning they're scoring 5-6 goals in the second half. And I think we lack that a bit. We sometimes get the 3 or 4 goals and then we struggle. I don't know if it's me and John. I think we sometimes can start the second half slow. I think of the Seven Oaks game at the weekend, and once we scored those first 3, we then struggled to kick on. And maybe that's something that the other teams do a bit better, and they're a bit more consistent with goal scoring in the smaller games. But it's hard to scratch at those little things when really you look and you say, if we convert one draw into a win, that's the league. So it's getting ourselves up for those games that aren't maybe the ones against Leeds and Teesside, but against West Brom and Middlesbrough and Greenbank, and saying if you win a single one of those and get yourselves up for it and are consistent there, it's the league.
Yeah, I look back at the Leeds game this weekend, JB, and do you think it would have been a different game had Leeds not been able to, get away with a point? It very much suited them to draw that game, and that gave them a real advantage. Do you think had you gone into that game level, for example, it would have been a different match?
Potentially, but no disrespect to Leeds, I don't believe that they sat back especially the first game. I just felt our defence was so good in both games. They struggled to get out and didn't create too many opportunities. Potentially in the second game, they sat back a little bit more and just defended the lead they had. But definitely in the first game, I felt we nullified them really too much until the last pretty much kick of the game where Ethan scored. So I think it's more what we done really well that nullified both Leeds and Teesside in the big games that came. And it was just about taking our chances, which we didn't necessarily do apart from the first goal in that Leeds game.
Yeah, Dan. So you started the weekend off looking at game week 5 with a game against Teesside, a 0-0 draw. Do you think you maybe, looking back on it, could have been more aggressive in that game? You saw maybe Teesside display a bit more weakness than you'd usually expect this weekend, and they really struggled in some of their other games. Do you think had you known that was the Teesside that were going to show up, you maybe would have not to be disrespectful to the players they have, but maybe been a bit more sort of front-footed and shown a little bit less respect to them.
Yeah, like obviously everyone we know as much as everyone after the tricky games we had against them last season, how much quality and attack Teesside have. But like watching them against West Brom and watching them even against like watching about the Newcastle game and the Leeds game, we've sort of seen after our game where the defensive weaknesses were, and we probably, as you said, the words gave them a little bit too much respect, in that we gave like Tyler and Greg so much respect defensively, and we probably didn't get on top of them as much as we would have if we had kind of seen that before. We knew that they'd stepped up against Villa in the weekend before. But I think we all sort of saw that as like the equivalent to like what Greenbank had against Throttles or we had against Middlesbrough, where it's not like you're a terrible team; it's just a slip up that you probably didn't want, and like it was a real smash and grab for Villa. It wasn't as if they'd been played off the park and Teesside had looked like conceding loads of times and they had a really weak defence. But that definitely shone for a bit more this weekend, and it's almost one of them where I think if we play maybe Seven Oaks first and then Teesside in the final game of the day, we probably do go into it with a bit more of a look, they're here for the taking, like let's get on top of them, and as soon as we sort of dominate them a little bit, they're going to get shaky. Whereas, yeah, we saw them as the T side of what we've come to know over the last sort of 18 months of they're going to be so solid and they can punish us at any minute. But then we actually saw, yeah, over the rest of their games, they weren't really doing that to teams. So we probably covered a bit too much defensively and could have been a bit more open and just beating them up their own game sort of thing.
Yeah, JB, you look at it with Teesside and Leeds and Greenbank going into the final weekend. Although, you know, we couldn't really be separated from any of them this season. Obviously, a win and a draw against Teesside, 2 draws against Leeds. So that sort of top 3 was, and then obviously Leeds and Teesside drew against each other, both sides. Do you think that's just a testament to how competitive it is at the top, that really out of the games between Leeds, Teesside, and us, only one of them ended up with a winner, and the rest were all draws?
Yeah, I don't think it's just the top. Like obviously Greenbank beat Leeds, Villa beat Teesside, um, West Brom narrowly lost to Leeds. They drew with us, so the league's so much open, and it's one of them where 1 or 2 seasons ago, if you weren't performing well, you'd still win the game. Whereas now you literally have to be performing at your best in every single game, because you can just slip up, and teams may not, the teams lower down the league may not know how to necessarily score against you, but they know how to make it hard and make it hard for you to score. So, and that's what we found a little bit hard, obviously, against Middlesbrough, which made us draw, which in theory for me lost us the league. It's them games that we need to punish, really. We can draw against Leeds and obviously on our day beat them or beat Teesside. But we know that other teams can also do the same, which is like what I say, what Greenbank done, and obviously Leeds and Teesside got to play each other twice, so any result can go in that game. I just felt like obviously it's so open, it wasn't necessarily reliant on just them 2 games or the 2 teams. I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's been a very competitive year on the whole, and the quality is spread out so much amongst the league now that you don't really have a super team like maybe in the Aspire and West Brom days. It's definitely sort of spread out through the league. Dan, does that make it more of an enjoyable league to play in, would you say? Or does it make it less enjoyable because you don't get sort of those, I don't want to call them gimme games because that's disrespectful to the teams of the past, but you don't get those games that, oh, okay, unless we have an absolute stinker of a day here, we're not going to, we're just going to come away with 3 points.
To be honest, for me, I prefer it how it is now because I used to, even in my very first season, it was still a bit like this, where you could go for a whole weekend and unless you're playing West Brom or Northern Thunder, you basically knew that like you could do whatever you wanted and barring a miracle, you would win the game. It definitely like I don't think I've ever, because I've only been playing the last few years, I've ever experienced a season fully like that. But I've definitely seen it gradually slip away, that era of you've got a 4 game weekend, and if it's not Northern Thunder or West Brom on the last game on the Sunday, then you're kind of just so relaxed going into it. Whereas now it's basically impossible for you to have a full weekend of games where you know they're going to be easy because like, obviously no disrespect to the bottom 2 or 3 teams. But in the league now, those are the only games you look at as maybe we can go play at 80, 90% as opposed to 100%, and you still should get the result. If you look at anyone above that, I mean, I think Middlesbrough came in 9th, and they were one of the only teams we stepped up against. So as much as you could say that was us being poor, they were still defensively set up well. And even looking back, I don't know the table, but I'm sure around like 4 or 5 years ago, the team that finished 6th was probably not set up particularly well defensively, but Newcastle came 6th, and we obviously, a lot of the team we were sat watching their game against Leeds yesterday, and they're so well drilled and set up defensively. And so if you put a team like that in the league 4 or 5 years ago, there's no way they'd be in 6th. Just being that well defensively set up, they probably wouldn't have conceded because other teams didn't have that attacking quality to break them down, which now a lot of teams do have.
Yeah, JB, obviously, so it started off with them 2 games, Leeds, Teesside, draws in both. And then it felt like there was a real mood shift and the sort of shackles came off. Is that unfair to say? And the football from that point to the end of the weekend from Aspire was absolutely breathtaking at times.
Yeah, it was incredible. We tried to play that way against Leeds and Teesside. Obviously, we didn't take the chances that we created, but I think in the following 3 games we were just immense. Like I said, I still think we were immense against Teesside and Leeds. It's just a shame we didn't get the goals. But in the other games, the football we played was something that we always envisaged that we play, and we try and play that way and score the beautiful goals that everyone goes mad about. But they don't always come off. But I just really got a real sense that it really clicked these last weekends. Everyone knew their jobs. The boys, obviously John and Dan mainly, the football that they played was outstanding. Like, I just watched both of them sometimes, and I just think, wow, like, I'm lucky to be playing with these boys. And obviously Dan, I could talk about him all day, but obviously John managed to get the goals, that his first career hat trick for Aspire. So that was a great thing for him. And I just felt like everything that we worked on really came, like, over the year, really came into fruition this weekend. And it's massive for us now to go into the Disability Cup, the WFA Cup, sorry, in a couple of weeks' time, and really keep that momentum going, and hopefully come away with the cup then.
Yeah, Dan, I wanted to talk about some of the assists and the link up between you and John Dixon. It looks like you really enjoy playing with him, and you've had some great wing partners across the years at Aspire and also at England level. But it looks like you and John Dixon have an understanding that is just as good, if not better, than any of them.
Yeah, last season I think was a bit of a strange one because John, it was his first time ever playing on the wing, I think, and you could definitely sort of see that he was picking things up as it went on, but he was learning. Whereas I think this season, obviously, he's still been developing, but his like base level at the start of the season after that Club World Cup and the cup final last year was so high already. And I think it's a strange. I think we're sort of different players, but similar in the same sort of sense. Like, we're both, obviously, he's very technically good, and like strong on the front bumpers, which is one of the things that I've always sort of thought that I was better at as well, the pickoffs. But he can also just hit the ball ridiculously hard, and his ball contact, like, ridiculously good. And just like watching him improve has been so good. And like, obviously, a lot of it's down to John teaching him like when to stay in reverse, when to make the right decisions. But I also kind of hope that playing with me as well, like, I've kind of had the same process as him, if you like coming into the squad very unexperienced, and then in the first season having that sort of breakout season that he's had as well. It's been like really nice to watch the similarities, and now, yeah, he's one of the scariest wingers for people to play against in the division. I think he ends on 17 or 18 goals as well, so one of the top scorers in the league. And people are now sort of stepping back and thinking it's not just me and John or whatever. It's like a full attacking team now, and we're like tear teams like Villa and Greenbank apart yesterday. They're like some of the most stubborn defensive teams in the league, and obviously it ended up John, like me and John, doing the link up, and John Dixon just finishing everything off yesterday. And we are so confident now that when he gets those chances, he just finishes them so clinically, and you give him 9 out of 10 sort of chances to the back post, and he scores them. So yeah, it's been good to sort of develop that partnership, and hopefully we can keep going and make it a bit of a legendary one.
Yeah, 100%. That would be amazing for years to come to see you two on the wings for Aspire. JB, so it wasn't quite to be, but a quick word for Leeds, who are the champions. I know you've sent your congratulations over to them, but yeah, I tell you what, we all thought, didn't we, in that Newcastle game when it got into that last 10 minutes that, hang on a minute, we could be in here, and then they snatched it away and broke all Aspire hearts. That is the sign of real maturity and real sort of winning mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, it was me and obviously we were sitting with Dan and we were watching it, counting down the minutes. Got to half time, 0-0, and Newcastle were defending out of the skin. Like Ollie seemed like he read literally everything. One of the best games I think I've seen Ollie ever play. It was just a shame, obviously, a mix up in their attack. It came all the way down the other end and gave away a corner, and they scored from there. But I gave huge congratulations to Russ after the game. The fact that not only did he make his sub, he took his son off in a game that they knew they had to win. And to take their son off to bring on Jack Maxwell, who everyone knows how clinical he is. He hasn't been given necessarily the game time that he had last year, so it's hard for him to adapt. But for him to keep that mindset of coming on, he's going to get a chance to obviously win the game and potentially win them the league. It was a massive call from Russ and Warren, and obviously it paid off with a great finish from Jack that won them the potentially, well, not mathematically, but really won them the league in that game. So yeah, huge congratulations to them. Obviously, I'm really good mates with Dill and Ethan, and I'm really glad to see them to put their hands on the trophy. Obviously, it's the first one for Ethan, so massive congratulations to him. But yeah, we'll be back, but I'll let them obviously enjoy this time for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a season where they put together a squad in the summer that everyone was excited about, and it's just people that maybe thought they'd take a bit of time to get going, and we maybe saw some teething issues in game week 1 and 2, but from that point onwards, they were just absolutely flying. And yeah, at the end of the day, to win the league when you've got a team beneath you that's gone unbeaten for the whole season, regardless of whether we had some silly draws that we've already spoken about, it's very impressive. And as well, I think it has to be sort of praised the way that they were being hunted down the entire weekend, obviously, by us. Our game times were basically, we were always playing a game before them. So the pressure was there every time. We beat Villa, for example, on Sunday morning, and they had to play straight after, and they knew that the 3 points were there. And if they'd slipped up, well, I'm sure we would have been very happy if that had fallen into our laps. Dan, next season, they'll be strong. Teesside will be strong. Another team that looked a lot stronger this weekend was West Brom. Back to their sort of, not quite their former glory, but back looking like a real competitor again. And it just feels like next season's going to be just as competitive, if not more so than this year.
Yeah, as you said, we're not going to see the quality of Leeds or Teesside, barring like a mad transfer window, go anywhere anytime soon. I don't think. Greenbank's going to be a strong team. We don't know whether Toby will be there next season, obviously, yet, but even with Jacob and Marcus, that's a strong base, isn't it? And yeah, having watched back now, I think we were playing same time as West Brom a few times, and there was like big games in the other court that I was watching, so I didn't really get to see much of them live. I only really saw the Teesside game. But yeah, I've managed to watch a little bit today, or at least some of the goals, and with those goals and then the performance as a whole in the Teesside game, they looked much stronger than they have all season. Like, no offense to them, but they would be the first to admit they've been as poor as I think I've ever seen West Brom be this year. I think like obviously they had Dylan leave, and he was one of the players that had been there for the last few years and become one of the core members. And like it's always gonna be difficult when someone that starts at every game for you and is one of your core players leaves to adjust. And they didn't really have. They had a lot of young lads like that have been through the throstles and that, like you had, and I had Harry that had signed newly for them, but no one that had really experienced the pressure of a title race and playing in those big games before. They'd kind of been even like Lucas and Ollie that had been there the year before had been bit part players and weren't really a part of like, that core starting four for them when they were in the title race last year. So we did see them kind of experiment with the four out. Obviously, Colin was coaching alongside Chris, and it didn't go their way. Obviously, for the first 4 weekends, they were conceding stoppy goals, and that even I think they conceded must be one of the most goals they've conceded in recent years, and they were just sloppy ones. They were going into big games and conceding early, like almost every time, which is so uncharacteristic of them and a team with Chris Gordon in. But this weekend, they definitely reverted a bit more to, I wouldn't say a 3 and a 1, but it was definitely closer to a 3 and a 1 than a 4 out. I think like Lucas was playing behind Chris a lot of the weekend, and he was still getting involved and coming forward, but it was less him and Chris balancing off each other and more one would go up like Leeds do. From set pieces, they might both go up, but a lot of the time it's just taking turns to go and have an attacking phase as a 3. And yeah, they had a lot of success. Obviously, they beat Teesside, which was a massive result for them, probably their biggest all season, and almost got a point off Leeds, or maybe even more if it hadn't been for that missed penalty. So I'm sure they'll be not even just looking forward to next season, but looking forward to the Cup Day, where they can kind of save their season. And I think that's kind of what we did last year. We didn't, I think we came third in the league, but it was like definitely a weaker season than we would normally be used to, like losing a lot of games compared to what we normally have. And then obviously you got to go to that Derby day and the Cup final day and win that. And it does definitely put a much more positive light on the season and make you feel like you've ended the season strong. So I'm sure they'll be there competing, and it'll be a really interesting game to see how they get on against Greenbank in the quarters.
Yeah, that leads me on to the cup day quite nicely, because that is the next thing in the calendar of what's been just a hectic few years of football, really. JB, obviously you're going to want to go and win that cup. That goes without saying. Are you looking forward to the day? It's the first time, obviously, that there's a 3 game day potentially at Derby Arena with a final there as well. How do you see it going, and what's your sort of message to people to try and get them to come along and experience it?
Yeah, it's a big day. Obviously, new format, so we're looking forward to the challenge. Obviously, we've just had a day of 3 games, so that's not going to bother us at all, really. It's just about managing the players' time throughout them games and making sure that everyone's on their peak when we need to be. Yeah, regarding people coming down, like I say, it's the first of its kind. There's 2 different trophies being shown, obviously the Vase and the cup that we're in. So come down, support everyone, see some bright talent that are in the Vase, and obviously see the old guard like us in the WFA Cup. So yeah, it should be a really great day, and we had a great number of fans. I think it was record attendance last year, so hopefully we can get more there this year, and yeah, have another great successful day to end the season, really.
Absolutely. It should be a good one. Aspire famously good in cup football, so let's hope we can carry that on. And also, John, it's an important year in terms of a qualification year as well for a Champions League, and we are the reigning champions of Europe. Make sure that everyone remembers that. We want to be there, don't we, to defend our title?
100%. And there's still an argument that we should be there regardless of if we win the cup or not, because what tournament you have where the winners aren't in it the following time, you know? So that's still to be decided as far as I'm aware. But we don't want to leave it into other people's hands. If we win the cup, then we'll have no question that we'll be there anyway. And we've experienced obviously the Club World Cup last year and the Champions League the time before that. So we know how fun and great experience it is for a team to go to a tournament like that. And it also helps the progression of individuals. So it's fantastic, and it's kind of a necessity for us to be there. So we're going to give it our all at Derby and make sure we're there.
Absolutely. Well, I don't really have a huge amount else to say, to be honest. We've sort of reflected on it because we do these podcasts little and often. We don't really sort of clog them with too much content. We want to keep it nice and short. So thank you both for joining me this evening. I'm sure we'll catch up again after Derby, hopefully after a trophy-winning Derby Arena day.
Yeah, just before you go, Chaz, I want obviously to say thanks to all of our supporters this season. especially the weekend just gone. They were so loud. We had so many people commenting on how loud they were, the pom-poms, the cheerleaders. It makes the experience for the game and for us as players, it's sometimes a little embarrassing, but it's fantastic that they're there, cheering us on, giving us support. And it does make a difference when you're in a game and you're hearing people cheer you on. So just for a round off, I just do want to say a massive thanks to everyone involved in Aspire for making this season what it has been. And we go again in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, and I'm just going to end off by saying, on a social media point of view, keep your eyes peeled, because although the National League season is over, there are a couple of really exciting announcements coming for Aspire over the next week or so about what the future looks like, and also about, importantly, trials. So if you're a player who's listened to this and has liked what you've heard, well, there'll be trials for several Aspire teams next season coming up this summer. So that'll be good. So please, and they'll be open to anyone who wants to come and try and prove themselves. So if you fancy a trip abroad potentially to the Champions League, and you fancy being involved in title races like the one we've spoken about today in the future, well, get yourself down, and the details of that will be coming shortly. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Thank you, John and Dan, for joining me up the Aspire.